I, 32 male, have spent the last 6 years building a life that, on paper, looked like the peak American dream. I'm a senior software architect, I make mid-six figures, and my wife, 30 female, hasn't had to work a day since our second anniversary. We lived in a massive 5-bedroom house in a gated community in North Carolina, a state where equitable distribution laws get very interesting when you're the sole provider and the mortgage is in your name. 3 days ago, my wife stood in our designer kitchen, sipping a $12 latte I paid for, and told me that if I didn't like her new rules, I could leave. She had no idea I'd already seen the credit card statements for her girls' trip to Miami that never happened. She didn't know I had time-stamped photos of her with her yoga instructor at a boutique hotel 3 towns over. The conflict didn't actually start with the cheating. It started with the pure, unadulterated entitlement. Over the last year, she'd turned from a partner into a warden. She demanded all my personal passwords for transparency, while her phone was locked tighter than a government vault. She started redecorating by tossing out my heirloom furniture without asking. Every time I'd object to her spending $8,000 on a rug or firing our gardener because he looked at her weird, she'd hit me with, "This is my house. These are my rules. If you can't handle a strong woman setting the tone for her home, there's the door." The night of the final blowout, I came home at 8 p.m. after a brutal release cycle at work. The house was spotless, but the kitchen was dark. I asked where dinner was, and she didn't even look up from her iPad. She told me she decided we were a vegan household now, and she'd cleared out the entire pantry. She told me if I wanted meat, I could go eat it in the garage because she wouldn't have the energy of a dead animal in her sanctuary. I was floored. She tossed $300 of groceries I bought on Sunday without a single phone call. When I called her out, she stood up with that practiced mask of condescension and told me I was being aggressive and triggering. Then she said it again, "My sanctuary, my rules. If you don't like the way I run this home, leave. I'm sure I can find someone who appreciates the environment I create." I didn't yell. I didn't even argue. I just looked at her and said, "Don't mind if I do." She actually laughed. It was this sharp, mocking sound. She told me I'd be back in 2 hours once I realized I didn't know how to work the washing machine. Then she went upstairs to pack for her meditation retreat the next morning. I went into my home office, locked the door, and finished a process I'd been prepping for weeks. See, my wife forgot a very important legal distinction. In North Carolina, separate property remains separate unless you gift it to the marital estate. I bought that house before we were married using an inheritance. I never put her name on the deed, and I never used marital funds for the mortgage. I used rental income from a condo I owned before the wedding. Also, every single joint credit card was actually a primary account in my name with her just as an authorized user. At 4 a.m., while she was snoring, I moved my essentials and my high-end workstation into a pre-rented storage unit. At 6 a.m., she left for her retreat, which my GPS tracker confirmed was just her boyfriend's apartment. The second her car cleared the neighborhood gates, I called the moving crew. By noon, the house was stripped. I took the furniture I paid for, the appliances I'd upgraded, and even the light fixtures I'd installed. Since I was moving out and the house was my separate asset, I had my attorney file a partition action and a notice of intent to sell. Then, the real fun started with the plastic. She was at a high-end spa with her lover, probably planning to drop a few grand on a couple's package on my dime. I sat in my new apartment, opened my laptop, and started deauthorizing everything. One by one. The Amex, the Chase, the retail cards, gone. I closed her access entirely. I changed the Netflix, the Hulu, the Peloton, and even disconnected the Nest thermostat and Ring doorbells. Around 2 p.m., my phone started exploding. The first texts were confusion. My card declined at the spa. Fix it now. Then panic. The Chase card isn't working. What did you do? Then rage. I'm at the hotel and they canceled my reservation because the card is invalid. I have nowhere to go. Stop playing games. I didn't reply. I was at my lawyer's office. North Carolina still recognizes alienation of affection, which gave me massive leverage because I had the hotel photos. My attorney confirmed that since she hadn't contributed a dime to the house equity, her claim to the property was basically non-existent. I opened my Ring camera feed and watched the show. She'd come home early because her retreat couldn't happen without my money. She tried her code on the front door. Nothing. I deauthorized her and changed the master PIN. She peered through the front window and saw a void. No $8,000 rug, no custom sofa, just bare floorboards. When she called me shrieking about where her stuff was, I kept my voice perfectly level. I told her that since it was my house, and she told me to leave if I didn't like her rules, I left. I just took my life with me. When she threatened to call the police, I told her to go ahead and explain to them how her husband moved out of a house he owned and took the furniture he bought. I also mentioned that her car lease was being terminated because the primary account holder, me, had reported a change in residency. The entitlement didn't stop there. Her mother called me, hissed about how I'd left her daughter homeless. I reminded her that her daughter was just no longer a resident of my private property and that she had 24 hours to grab her clothes off the porch before they went to Goodwill. I also brought up the $15,000 the mother owed me from last Christmas and told her I'd be filing that in small claims court by the end of the week. But there was a deeper layer to this. My wife had been investing her $4,000 monthly allowance into a wellness startup called Lumina Flow, run by the yoga instructor. She'd even convinced her mother to put $50,000 of her retirement into it. Since I'm a software architect, I'd looked into this app. It was a total scam, just a landing page with a donate button linking to the guy's personal PayPal. The next morning, she showed up at the house with a locksmith and a cop. I was already inside, sitting on a folding chair with my attorney and a stack of notarized papers. She started wailing to the officer that I'd locked her out of her marital residence. I handed the cop the deed and the premarital documentation. My lawyer stepped in and reported grand larceny/embezzlement of marital funds for the $60,000 she'd funneled to her lover's shell company. The officer told her it was a civil matter and he couldn't force me to let her in. She was stuck on the porch with no car and no money. She had to call the yoga instructor to pick her up. He rolled up in a black Porsche, which I knew was bought with her mother's retirement money, and I made sure to get a high-res photo of them for the lawsuit. The instructor's zen attitude vanished the moment he was served with a $250,000 alienation of affection lawsuit. He did exactly what entitled cowards do. He turned on her. He kicked her out of his place to fix the optics of the case, leaving her in a budget motel, eating vending machine food. The final settlement was brutal. She was so desperate, and the evidence of her cheating was so clear that she signed over any interest in the house and my retirement just to avoid criminal embezzlement charges. The instructor had to liquidate the Porsche to pay back the mother about 40 cents on the dollar. It wasn't everything, but it kept the mother from being totally destitute. 2 weeks after the divorce was final, I sold the house for a huge profit. On moving day, I saw her drive by in a beat-up sedan. She watched the new owners, a young, happy couple, carrying a crib through the front door. She looked at me, and I just gave her a small, polite wave as I got into my car. I'm in a high-rise downtown now. It's smaller, but the energy is great because there are no fake rules, only mutual respect and peace. I learned that when someone tells you to leave, you should believe them. You just have to make sure you take the floorboards with you when you go. Justice isn't always a judge's gavel. Sometimes it's just the sound of a credit card being declined at a spa. If you enjoyed watching a wellness scam get detoxed by the legal system, why not subscribe? It's the only way to ensure your feed stays high vibe and entitlement free.